hear anything to it.
All right, welcome everybody. This is Kate Archibald, director at Go Wellness, and we are so honored to have you on today. We are going to be talking briefly, give you a little glimpse into the functional medicine boot camp coming up this weekend, as well as helping you understand what types of labs to get started with, kind of doing some basic things and avoiding the overwhelm when it comes to getting your patients on lifestyle programs and functional medicine programs. So Reagan Archibald's here with me. He's going to be presenting. And so before I turn it over to him, I want to make sure everyone has the ability to ask questions and everyone can hear me okay. Everyone just type into the question box or the chat box yes, or your voice sounds horrible. Just give me a comment. Anything. Otherwise, I'll start calling you out individually. All right, nice. So someone can hear me. I at least got one response. All right. Can anyone else hear me? Mike, can you hear me? I was just texting you. All right, so Roxine can. All right, great. We're gonna go ahead and get started, and I'll turn it over to Reagan. So be thinking about what you guys want to get out of this and learn, and then send it in the questions as well. So if you have some key questions you'd like Reagan to cover, let's make sure you get those answered today. We're honored to have you on, and I'm turning it over to Reagan Archibald.
Okay. Hey everybody, welcome. So today we're going to cover some really cool stuff, and with me I've got Dr. Antori. He came all the way from Grass Valley, California, so you're going to hear some dialogue from him and I. He's actually doing a shadowing with us. He was with me all day yesterday, and today he's up here in our Park City clinic, and so yeah, good to have you here, Charles.
Thanks for having me, Reagan. This is exciting. This is my first time being here for your lecture.
Yeah, good. All right, so let's jump in. So how many of you are practicing functional medicine? Yeah, I know Mike, Sherry, a couple of our clients. We've got some new people on who have never attended this, so maybe you can kind of plug in what your goals are for attending this webinar, what you want to get out of it. I want to see if I can help you reach your goals in your practice and goals in your life. So when you're looking at okay, can everyone hear me? All right, there we go. It looks like I got a little glitch right there. Okay, so looking at building...
Your connection's pretty poor, Reagan.
I think, yeah. Can you hear me?
Your connection is a little bit spotty. I don't know if it's the location you're in, or maybe you're too far from the Wi-Fi connection, something like that.
Okay, let me sneak over into my other office a little closer to the main hub and see if that helps everybody. Oh shoot, is that better?
That
Hello?
seems a lot better, actually.
Okay, let me okay, we'll hang out here then. All right, so 4 P's of functional medicine. It's got to be personalized. Now, what does it mean to have personalized medicine? Well, if you go to any doctor's office and you're going to basically get thrown out. They're going to say, well, here's the disease that you've got, here's your diagnosis, and here's the treatment. And if you disagree with what they're saying, then you're basically going to be shunned. So we want to make it personalized to the point where this is a lifestyle program. So we're going to help get into some of the choices, some of the issues that a person has experienced that has led their health down the wrong path, and we want to not only train them on how to recover their health, but we're going to personalize it by showing them labs and showing them exactly how their body functions. So 3 of the main labs that we use to personalize things is we personalize nutrition. So we use food sensitivity testing, which we'll talk about today. food sensitivity testing, that can be done through hair, it can be done through blood, it can be done through SIGA, through saliva. So there's different ways of personalizing it. That's one of the tests. The second test you want to use to personalize things is use genetics. So for those of you who missed our and COMT discussion last week, get on the webinar page on the website. Go to gowellness.com and you can listen to the genetic profile, because once again, genetics play a key role in making things personalized. The third thing that I see in making things personalized is looking at somebody's adrenal functions. Now, the adrenal is where you, remember, we're using tests that you can gauge lifestyle with. So MTHFR, COMT, you're going to realize that this person is not methylating properly, they're not detoxifying, so you're going to help them make modifications in their day-to-day life. Like if you look at my methylation cycles, I mean, virtually every pathway has heterozygous mutations, so I really have to do a lot of self-care. And when I do that, I feel amazing. But without it, I can really go downhill quickly. And I think a lot of our patients are in the same boat. When you use adrenal testing, then you can say, well, we want to customize an exercise program for you. And we don't customize that until we look at how your adrenals are functioning, because that's really where we can understand the kind of output that you can use with exercise and not crush yourself, because recovery is where all the benefits come from exercise. So that's how we're going to personalize it. You want to make it predictive. So predictive is, you know, we can predict that if someone's got dysbiosis in their stool, we can understand that this is where a lot of the inflammatory markers are coming from, and this is part of the cause of autoimmunity in the future. So you want to let them know what they can expect into the future through the correct testing. You can also easily predict what's going to happen to somebody if they stay on drugs. I mean, methamphetamines, we don't recommend anyone stay on meth for more than a year, wouldn't you say, Charles?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good idea. I got it down for a year.
Okay, no, we don't want them on that, but you know what's going to happen if they stay on it? They're gonna go downhill fast. So we want to be predictive about their lifestyle and how that's influencing their overall health. Preventative, once again, I think if you look at adrenal profile, you can be preventative. If you look at food sensitivities, like, hey, you can prevent inflammation from showing up just by eliminating these specific foods. Now, I hope everyone on here knows that some of the major foods that people are reactive to are going to be like your gluten, your soy, your corn, dairy, sugar, even peanuts. Those are some of the main foods that are going to cause inflammation. So if you want people to prevent disease, you got to get them off some of those foods. And then finally, it's got to be purpose-driven. So I have always said that traditional Chinese medicine is the original functional medicine. And for you chiros who are listening in and the one sitting next to me, if you look at Chinese medicine, you look at 2,000–3,000 years ago, they're actually doing bone setting. I don't know if you've studied bone setting, but you know the principles are all in alignment. What we're doing is enhancing the function of the body, and we say, okay, well, what does function mean? And all function means, in a very scaled down dictionary version, is it's the ability to perform an action. So if you've got 100% of your abilities to perform an action, then I'd say you're 100% healthy. And so that's what functional medicine is all about, is understanding where the body loses its ability to perform its unique functions. So hopefully it gives you a good overview. Please type in your questions here. Sometimes I miss those, so Cade will pick those up as he goes. And okay, let me. All right, so let's talk about some tests. What are some of the tests you guys are running in your practices? There we go. So yeah, hopefully a lot of you are doing blood tests. I know Dr. Antori, you're doing some blood tests. Does this make sense to you? Functional versus disease?
Yeah, for sure. We're doing a lot of blood tests, but yeah, we definitely want to be definitive and not guess. So we're doing the testing to see where they're at that specific time, and it's really been beneficial.
Okay, what have you seen is the most beneficial about running, labs for your patients?
Well, it answers first and foremost, the patients that do the functional medicine program usually are well read and well informed. They've done some due diligence and research, so it gives them a lot of answers. They want to know. They want to know what's going on with their blood. They think it's important because they've read up on it, and so this is very satisfying for them. I know. As a patient myself, when I want to look into something, blood work, if that reveals something, I definitely want to do it. So this is a big positive for them. They know where to start. They know what they're dealing with, and it gives us insight too. But I think that's really important for the patient to feel like something's being done, like we're really looking at it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and I think if you're going to look at your patient's labs, you don't trust the labs because any lab that you receive is based on a bell curve. That's one thing I like about ZRT labs is they actually show you more of a functional approach. You can run it through Doctor's Choice. They're another lab that will show you more of the functional markers, but you want to make sure and narrow the parameters. So if you've got labs that show normal and your patients still feel like crap, then what you want to do is take a deeper look at those. And that's going to be huge. So here's some things you want to look at. We're going to be going through this in detail. We don't have time in this webinar, but this overall blood panel is going to be discussed in detail at our upcoming boot camp. So for those of you who are registered, great. For those of you who are not, our boot camp, we have 4 spots left, and we're closing registration tomorrow. So get on, go to gowellness.com, go to our events page for this boot camp. But we're going to go through all these things because, I mean, you see patients with elevated triglycerides, for example. So what does that mean? Well, that can be one of the earliest signs of insulin resistance. And what does it mean to have insulin resistance? Well, that's when your cells do not take sugar into they don't accept insulin, and so they can't get sugar into the cells. So you want to look at elevated triglycerides. How about depressed triglycerides? Well, sometimes a vegan diet can do that, or not consuming enough fatty foods. We want our patients consuming about 130 to 150 grams of fat every single day, and that's far outside of the norm. So the other thing that depressed triglycerides could mean is it's depressed due to a low TSH with elevated T4 and T3, so it's symptoms of hyperthyroidism. And what we've seen in a lot of cases too is if you've got high levels of homocysteine or C-reactive protein, then that can cause this hyperthyroid issue too, because what happens is you get your cells become resistant to taking in thyroid hormone. So we'll go through some of this. One of the big things you want to look at if you're trying to help your patients, I want you to start thinking about what can you do with labs that's a simple way to start. Now, 2 of the things you need to rule out right out of the gates is you need to rule out anemia. You also need to rule out issues with A1C, issues with blood sugar. So correct A1C, we want you to be 4.9 to 5.4. If a patient is anemic and they have some type of insulin resistance, no matter what you do for them, if you don't balance their blood sugar a little bit and build up their blood, it's going to be very difficult to get their biome fixed. It's going to be difficult to fix their hormones. It's going to be difficult all around. So these are some early markers that you want to be looking at when it comes to issues with your patients. We see a lot of insulin resistance, and we see early markers for diabetes, and so you want to be aware of what those markers look like. One of the things you can look at is glucose. Functional range is going to be 85 to 99. The lab ranges are going to be 65 to 99. Patients who are insulin resistant, they're going to have a lab value that's over 100, and it's not uncommon to see that with glucose levels. With hemoglobin A1C, once again, depends on the lab, but usually they'll let you go 4.8 to 5.6. Most labs will say 4.7 to 5.7. Once again, we want to get that marker more like 4.9 to 5.3 or 5.4. That's pretty ideal with avoiding the insulin resistance. Some of the treatments to reverse it, which I won't get into too much today, but if you put on 15 pounds of muscle, I don't know if you knew this, Dr. Antori, but the research shows that if a diabetic type 2 diabetic can gain 15 pounds of muscle. They will reverse their type 2 diabetes.
Yes,
So,
I'm familiar with that. Yeah, I've heard that.
okay, great. We use incinase, equilibrium, cinnamon is a great way, and then a ketogenic diet. I mean, just getting your patients doing some intermittent fasting can be one of the best things you can do for blood sugar. All right, thyroid function. You guys know there's a lot of functions in the thyroid, and so once again, we have other webinars specific to the thyroid, but don't trust the labs because most labs, what they're going to test is TSH. Now, how often would you say, Dr. Antori, you have a patient who brings their labs in because their very first visit with this, we say, bring any labs you've had ran within the last 6 months. And how many times have you actually seen patients that have anything beyond maybe TSH, T4, and maybe a little T3? Have you ever seen anyone run a real thyroid panel?
Well, you know, as I've done since I started the functional medicine program, I've done 7 functional medicine programs, and 5 out of 7 of those have had their labs, and absolutely none of them have had the number of labs you know, that I'd like to see. And they go to specialists and thyroid specialists and endocrinologists, and they do a couple labs, 2, 3, and I just ask myself, you know, I haven't been doing this for 40 years. I'm not an expert, but why are they adding those other labs? It's just, it's a question that I have, but what we've been doing is very comprehensive, and it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's, I had a patient just about a month ago. She came in, she'd been to 5 endocrinologists, and she brought in labs from each one of those. Ironically, not a single one of those endocrinologists ran anything for the antibodies.
Wow.
And so what I told her, I said, well, 90% of thyroid issues in women is due to an autoimmune disease. It's very well known, and the research is actually showing that number maybe is closer to 93%. Like if you read Isabella Wentz's book on Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And it's crazy because all we did for this patient, we ran her antibodies. We found that her TPO was, I think it was like 640, and we like it, you know, 25 or below. And so we saw that and we said, well, this has nothing to do with your thyroid. That's why the medications don't make you feel better. This has everything to do with your immune system. So we've been treating her immune system, and in just a short period of time, her energy's back. She's feeling great. She's ready to take on a new position at work, which before that she was too tired. And so, yeah, it's pretty amazing what you can do if you run all the right tests. So thyroid, you know, we've got functional ranges here. TSH is the common one you're going to see. It's going to be 1.8 to 3.0. Lab range will typically be 0.45 to 0.45. I've seen lab ranges that are, you know, they go as much as 0.45 and then they go as high as like a 5.7 or 5.9. So we want to make sure functionally 1.8 to 3.0. For those of you who are trying to get pregnant out there, like a 2.0 to 2.4 is pretty ideal. You don't want to overstress the thyroid. But remember, your patients who come in who say, I've got thyroid issues, if you're not running the correct tests, you could miss the whole picture because the thyroid is like the canary in the coal mine. It shows up at the end. It's not the first thing typically to go unless someone's been exposed to, like, you know, radioactive waste or lots of environmental toxins that can really destroy the thyroid. But otherwise, what we see is most of the time there's something else that's causing it. The thyroid is just that's the gland that you start getting all the symptoms from. But you got to dig deeper and look at the gut. You got to look for leaky gut, look for zonulin, lipopolysaccharides, and then look at the adrenal function, because if cortisol is dysregulated and the hypothalamus and pituitary, if that HPA axis is broken at all, the thyroid is the gland that suffers. So make sure you're looking at these other markers. T4, you can see lab ranges 4.5 to 12. We want it to be at least 6 to 12. T3, your active hormone, that's 71 to 180 is lab ranges. Functionally, we want it to be about 100 to 180. And once again, use your clinical expertise. Some people you want to run them a little higher depending on what their goals are, and some a little lower. Free T4, so that lab range is 1.2 to 4.9. Functional range is going to be 1.2 to 4.9. So it's pretty similar on the free. On the reverse T3, now this is about the only marker that we can use to determine if somebody's got leptin resistance. And for those of you who don't know what leptin resistance is, that's where your patients just can't get satiated. They're hungry all the time. So reverse T3 is one of the only markers that I've ever seen for that. But it will be elevated if you've got too much stress, too much inflammation, and illness. And like I said, if you've got leptin resistance. So lab range 9.2 to 24.1. There's not really a functional range that's been established yet. Free T3, lab range 2.0, functional range 3.0 to 4.0. T3 uptake, that lab range 24 to 39, functional range 28 to 38. So a little tighter is where you want to take all your labs when you're looking at these. Now TPO is huge. Lab ranges 0 to 34 is normal. Like I said, we like to keep it under about 25. The thyroglobulin is, typically that lab range is going to be 0 to 0.9.
Yeah, that's interesting, Reagan, that you mentioned the TPO in your patient was like 640. Just last week, I had a patient whose TPO was up in the upper 600s. And if I'm not mistaken, that's like 1,500% higher than what it should be. And he was really worried about it. And
Yeah.
he's on levothyroxine by his doctor,
Mhm.
0.75 milligrams every day. And he had a normal T4 free and total, but his T3s were all low. And I talked to him about Hashimoto's a little bit, and I can't legally, quote unquote, diagnose him. He's got to go back to his MD or endocrinologist for that. But I asked him about that. He'd never heard about that. They'd never talked to him about it. They're actually lowering his levothyroxine, and they've never discussed really anything with him. So I'm excited. On Saturday, I'm going to bring this up for the at the boot camp to kind of look into it a lot more.
Great. Yeah, we're going to dig in deep there. So, do you know why doctors don't really address Hashimoto's?
No.
The treatment's the same. So, if you get diagnosed with Hashimoto's, you're still getting levothyroxine. If you're diagnosed with hypothyroidism, then you're still getting levothyroxine. So there's really there's no reason for them to keep digging in most cases. So if you don't want to give someone a diagnosis they got Hashimoto's, we always say you've got an autoimmune issue. And so that's the easiest thing. We are going to treat your immune system. I don't care what the name of the disease is. That's right. We're concerned with the function of the body. So
right.
Cool. All right. So I won't get into thyroid metabolism. You guys know this. Let's talk about adrenals real quick. So how many of you have patients who have adrenal fatigue? I mean, we hear this a lot, and whatever you're looking at, the main way that we've diagnosed adrenal fatigue over the years is looking at 3 markers. The total cortisol. You can see on this patient, her total cortisol is low. It's 18. We want her to be up around between 23 and 42 is pretty ideal. DHEA has to be low, and then pregnenolone, which you don't see on this lab. But those 3 markers are the main ways that you can diagnose adrenal fatigue. Now, what does that mean? That means a lot of things, because if someone's got low cortisol all throughout the day, then she's going to want to exercise in the morning, or whenever cortisol values are the lowest. You got to consume lots of calories from fats, because fats are hormones. And the best way to provide nutrients and to really build up your adrenals is get lots of fats, lots of good vitamins, like vitamin C specifically. That's what your adrenals can really feed on. But if your patients are, let's say their cortisol levels are dipping at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you want to get them exercising right around 2 o'clock, because exercise is one of the best ways that your patients can actually fix their adrenals. Adrenal plaques, the kidney yon tonic, those are a couple of good Chinese herbal formulas that you can use to correct your adrenal hormones. Here's some other labs. This patient starts out cortisol pretty high in the morning. So pop quiz, if they're starting out with their cortisol levels a little elevated in the morning, what's going to be a good activity for them, Dr. Antori? You want them to go do something high intense, or you want them to meditate or go to a yoga class?
Maybe meditate and go to a yoga class would be a good idea.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, if they're dumping a lot of coffee down their throat and not really doing anything to regulate that higher levels of cortisol, then that's a problem. The other thing you want them to do is at night have them eat an avocado. That's got tryptophan in it. It's got lots of good fats. That's a great way of having them wake up in the morning with a little less cortisol. They can meditate. at least 20 minutes before they go to bed. That's a great activity, and then when they wake up. The mindset morning is the very first thing we train our wellness members on, so I'd have them make sure they're doing their mindset morning. This patient is pretty much low all day long. Right the first thing in the morning, they are low. They're low all day, so this could be a person who has a chronic infection. This could be a person who's got severe dysbiosis. Could be, this is pretty typical in chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, Lyme's disease. Patients' cortisol values can show up like this. So this is a person you want them walking, you want them doing maybe some type of yoga exercise.
Hey, Reagan, are you there? Reagan.
Like athletes, their
Hey,
cortisol that
Reagan.
tends to run really high. Go ahead.
Reagan, we lost you there for about 30 seconds.
Okay, well, I'm not repeating anything today, so I'm sorry, everybody. You're just going to have to suffer. Okay. All right, so I was talking about cortisol levels. If they're low all day, do not push them too hard. Make sure that they're doing like yoga, they're going for a walk, they're just relaxing. They're getting in their meditative state, because if you push a person too hard when their cortisol is low, they will not recover. Athletes, however, they love their cortisol to be running a little higher. They really feel good if their cortisol levels are, if they're being pushed. So with your athletes, sometimes you have to let them know that, hey, your adrenals are going to burn out if you keep pushing yourself like this, and they are not going to like it when you try and regulate the cortisol with, maybe some adaptogenic herbs. Get them on some astragalus, some cordyceps, things like that. All right, so here's some ways of correcting it. Let's talk about food sensitivities real quick. Dr. Antori, what would you say the biggest value is, since, you've been working with us for a few months now. What's the value in running a food sensitivity test for your patients?
Well, the patients really love to see what possibly could be irritating them. I just got a couple of food sensitivity tests back last week, and actually three of the patients, and it was really neat because they saw some things on the results that didn't surprise them, but they saw a lot of stuff that they had really no idea was going to be revealed. So we put a little plan together and discussed it, and how they're going to strategically kind of avoid those foods for 4 to 6 weeks, and then reintroduce them if they'd like to. But it gives a great insight, and most of the time it's very surprising. This company tests a lot of stuff. 600 things, and some of the stuff on there is pretty funny. It's pretty wacky. Like, one of the patients found out that they were allergic to cockroaches. So I told him he had to get rid of his cockroach collection. But no, seriously, really cool stuff is revealed.
Yeah, well, and this is just an ALCAT image, but the test Dr. Antori was referring to is actually, it's food sensitivity testing that we do with a company out of the UK, and actually, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but the owners of the company, they came and flew out here last week and met with me. And so they want me to be part of their advising committee. We're going to be developing new protocols. They're going to take hair testing to the next level. And so,
cool.
So very involved with them. Some of the weird English words that they use that don't make any sense, they're going to try and make it more Americanized. And so that'll be cool. It's going to be exclusive only for practitioners, so that a patient can't go order their own tests online. That's going to be exclusive in the United States. So get ready for some super cool things, because it's weird when you have patients who are reacting to like rat epithelium. You're like, okay, there's there's rat skin cells floating around your house. Watch out for those. But the nice thing I like about food sensitivity tests, I've done all of them. We've looked at the Cyrex panels, we've looked at the ELSA, we've looked at ALCAT, we've used hundreds of ALCATs. And what I found is that no food sensitivity test is 100% accurate. But what I do find is that it's 80%, 80 to 85% accuracy can take you so much farther in getting a person to make changes, because that some of their favorite foods that show up, and they've got the tears streaming down their face because you just told them, you know, they can't eat chocolate for a month, and they're crying, and you're like, well, no, see the difference. I mean, I had a patient last week. She does leadership coaching for the FBI, and she came in with chronic sinuses. Her energy was low. She's like, look, I love my work. I'm super passionate, but I've got no juice anymore. And we did food sensitivity testing on her, and dairy was the like 100% reactive, 99% reactive. And she got rid of dairy for 1 week, and she came in. She said, "I'm really mad at you, Reagan. I hate you." And I said, "Well, what did I do, Miss FBI?" And she said, "My sinuses are cleared up entirely, and my energy is twice as good as it was in 1 week."
That's awesome.
She said, "I know it was the dairy." So,
Wow.
so foods are very powerful, but sometimes people need some objective measurements. And for those of you who don't like drawing blood or don't have medical staff, the hair is an easy way to go. All right, so let's talk about the microbiome just a little bit. There's a lot of different species, 25 in your stomach, 500 to 1,000 in your intestines, 600 in the mouth. I mean, if you look at overall the amount of species, we've got trillions of cells. In fact, there's 300 trillion bacterial cells in your gut, 100 trillion on your skin. It's enough that someone used a metaphor, if you stacked each one of these bacteria on top of each other, it would reach the moon. I don't know who the hell has the time to figure out those funky little things, but it's kind of a good picture. But you know, a lot of people wonder, well, who came first, us or the bacteria? And you know, obviously it was the bacteria, and they organized themselves in a way so that they could be contained in this living organism. So what we've learned so dramatically over the last decade is that the microbiome, the bacteria in our gut, has far more of an influence on us than we ever thought. Because, I mean, how did we look at bacteria 50 years ago, Charles?
Well, Pasteur, he created the germ theory of disease.
Yep.
And from what I understand, he later in his life rejected that theory, and he actually said, in French, of course, the
Yep.
germ is nothing, the terrain is
The
everything.
terrain,
Yeah, he's
yes.
talking about the milieu. He's talking about the blood. We keep the blood clean. But yeah, the germ theory of disease. So these horrible predators that are waiting to attack us. But the fact of the matter is when we're compromised, we can't defend ourselves. So that's what's really important.
Yeah, totally. That's beautiful. I was thinking of the same analogy. It's not the terrain. That's what he's saying on his deathbed.
Yeah.
No one listened, though, because we thought in medicine, we said, hey, we've invented antibiotics. We got a drug that can kill bacteria, and we invented steroids. And so, you know, the medicine, the dark age medicine, I like to call it, is you know, from like 1950 to about 2000, when we thought we could just stop because we got the drugs we need. We have steroids and we've got antibiotics. And now what we've got, and so now things have shifted. That's where functional medicine becomes key, and that's where those of you who are listening have an amazing opportunity to really change people's lives permanently. And that's what I love about functional medicine, is it's very technical. You can learn, you can study all day long and just keep digging, 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 and never get bored of this stuff if you're passionate about helping people. And so, yes, it's something we have to look at. 95% of the bacteria are actually good. There's some that are really harmful for us, like the Campylobacter, the Enterococcus faecaceus, and then, of course, C. diff. C. diff, they're treating it a lot with fecal matter transplant, and they're having amazing results with that when all else is failing. We've got a patient who we ran her stool test, and she had C. diff, and we are trying to get her to finally do the fecal matter transplant.
Well, I can't wait. If you do that, I want to know what happens.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited. We just need your stool, Charles. So if you don't mind, we'll give you $50 for it.
Oh, you're horrible.
All right. If anyone out there's got super clean poop, just send it to Charles, his clinic, and he's going to analyze it.
I'll give you the parts to do, Chris.
Yeah.
Kate can sort it through.
But no, we call it getting the scoop on your patient's poop, because this and the microbiome gets a little more technical. So, you know, when you're looking at this, it's like reading a foreign language, and that's why there's cool support at the labs. you're going to have great people to talk to. But you want to look at a gut, a healthy gut. What it's going to do is help ferment the indigestible carbohydrates. That's where you're going to get your oligosaccharides, polysaccharides, all those things that need to be broken down. You're going to get a production of vitamins. It's going to protect you from pathogenic bacteria and viruses. It also primes your immune system, so you need a healthy gut. Your immune system and your bacteria are always communicating. So about 70% of your immune system, 70 to 80%, is called your GALT, but that exists right around your large intestine. And so if you've got any issues with bacteria, if you've got food sensitivities, if you've got leaky gut, your immune system is going to be freaking out. So in Chinese medicine, I don't know how it is in chiropractic medicine, but all diseases originate from the gut. And if you look at Greek medicine, you look at anything that Hippocrates said, it was always, everything traces back to having a healthy gut. And now we just name more things. Now we know that there's multiple species. In fact, some of the research is showing that in industrialized countries, there's certain bacteria that should be on the endangered species list, because you look at an indigenous tribe, they have at least 1,600 different species in their large intestine, whereas in our country it's like 500 to 1,000, so maybe up as much as 1,200. So we've got a big problem there.
So wait a minute, Reagan. So those indigenous species, is their poop going to be more valuable on the free market than something say in New York City?
Well, I don't know about you, but if there's an indigenous culture and I found that stool on the trail, I'm taking that thing and putting it in a blender. I'm going to use it.
I'm thinking entrepreneurship. We could
totally.
set up
we're
a
like
website where you just order this stuff.
There's a lot of. This is actually a really good business idea, because imagine if we're like, hey, we'll do a trade. Here's some currency, or we'll build a school if you want our weird education. But and all we need is your poop in exchange.
So valuable.
Man,
living off the land and being away from industrialized communities.
And the irony is, it would help them. I mean, well, maybe. I don't know what it would do to the ecosystem, but imagine the amount of autoimmunity we could reverse just by doing a fecal matter transplant. In Chinese medicine, they used to call it the yellow soup therapy. They were doing it 2,000 years ago. They were doing fecal matter transplants. So
that's amazing.
This is not new medicine, but I think Charles just came up with the brilliant idea. We always give an award to the Entrepreneur of the Day award, so that goes to Dr. Antori, and he's going to set up a whole fecal transplant protocol with indigenous cultures. So the Aborigines, watch out, here comes Dr. Antori.
I've got the gloves on.
All right, well, let's look at leaky gut real quick. I want to see if anyone's got any questions yet. Any poop on the market out there yet? Not yet, but we'll get some. Okay. All right, leaky gut. So what causes leaky gut? What is leaky gut in the first place? Well, that's where you have undigested food particles that breach your intestinal wall and end up into your bloodstream and your body undigested, and that's a big issue. Your immune system sees it as a direct threat. It causes inflammation, autoimmunity, you get malnutritional deficiency. So your patients who they're eating a lot but they're not thriving, most of them are going to have leaky gut. What causes this? Dietary proteins. Gluten is a big cause. And my patients who think gluten's just kind of trendy, I'd let them know it's like eating a ball of hair, because that's the same texture of gluten, and that's what your body has to break down. All these little fibers in these hairs that are very difficult. We make gluten, especially in America, the way we've genetically modified it is so that there's more air, so it gives a better texture, and we're texture freaks. I'm a Taurus, so I love the way things feel. And trust me, getting rid of gluten was not fun for me, but it got rid of my psoriasis, 15 years ago. So I know it works. Low hydrochloric acid and enzymes. So if your food is not digested in your stomach, it gets putrefied, and by the time it hits your large intestine can't break that stuff down. Antibiotics, they can do it. Infections, you have a yeast overgrowth against good bacteria. Blood sugar issues. You know, that's we talked about your A1C, and then antibodies. You know, pregnancy can be one of the big markers because your immune system gets suppressed temporarily. Stress can do it. Menopause, toxins, food allergens, all these things can cause leaky gut. And there's actually, you know, there's an article that was published, I think it was July 28th, in, I believe it was the New York Times, and they're finally saying non-celiac gluten sensitivity is a real disease that people should be aware of. It only took them like 10 years to finally feel like there's enough data, because a lot of people who are gluten sensitive, you know, most of the scientists say, oh, that's a bunch of hogwash. If they're not, you know, tested for celiacs, there's no reaction to gluten. It's a trend. But they're finally, the researchers are looking at it and starting to identify that's a big issue. All right, so leaky gut, how do you test it? Well, you can look at zonulin, you can look at lipopolysaccharides. Now, zonulin is what controls the gates of the intestinal wall. When zonulin levels get high, that means the zonulin's crept into your blood supply. It's not where it needs to be. Lipopolysaccharide is on the bacteria. The healthy bacteria on their backs is this little lipopolysaccharide, and it's food. And when the bacteria dies, these lipopolysaccharides crawl off of it, and they leak through an intestinal wall that's breached. They're searching, they're cruising through your body, and lipopolysaccharides can actually block your thyroid hormones from taking in, thyroid cells from taking in the thyroid hormones. So lipopolysaccharides is wreaking havoc on thyroid function.
Now, is that because they take up residence on those receptors where they occupy sites?
Exactly. That's one of the areas where they go and stick to. Just like some of the toxins, like the xenobiotics in the environment, they'll latch onto the estrogen receptor sites in cells. Lipopolysaccharide does the same with the. So you guys, we've talked about this, gluten sensitivity. I just want to talk about Jesus before we end. You know, I don't want us to get too freaky, but you know, you have people, I can't eat that, I'm vegan. Has that been tested for mercury? Is that bread gluten-free? You know, we don't want our patients to freak out too much, but I think if you run the right tests, then you can really see what's going on. So I hope this has been a great overview for all of you. Hey, Charlie. Yeah, anyway, we got some questions coming in. I have no idea what these questions are. But if anyone of you have any more, I can take you off mute. Or Kate, if you wouldn't mind taking people off mute, and we can have a little conversation about how to splice this in, because functional medicine is amazing, but the big thing is how can you influence your patients to see the value in a program, because what we train you on in our Healthcare Entrepreneur program is we train you on how to put all the testing, all the coaching visits, all the treatments, all your curriculum, because you're going to be developing classes, because we have to elevate medicine to the next level. We need more entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are those people who are going to really know how to do this. So we want to train you on how to be that person. But you know, what would you say, Dr. Antori, has been the biggest learning experience that you've received so far in our program, as far as how to build all these labs into a functional medicine program?
Honestly, I don't know if this is the answer that you're looking for. If you're looking for an answer,
I'm not looking for an answer.
But literally, the biggest learning experience is just doing it.
Yes,
this is straight up.
Do it.
I'm so nervous doing some of these things initially, but I start it, I do it, and it's successful. Even when I'm doing it bad, it's successful. So this
Crazy.
Stuff is just, it really is. It's so exciting and awesome, and the patients love it, and I love it even more, man. It's so satisfying when we can help people so much.
Yeah. Well, the thing I admire about you is you took this information and you ran tests on, I think it was a mother and a daughter right after you signed up for our program, and that's our mantra. We say you sell a program first, and then you learn how to do everything else. And so you're calling us out, you're calling me, sending texts, calling Dr. Taylor, and you're like, what does this mean? And that's the thing, is you'll never force yourself to learn how to do these tests and how to implement functional medicine until you actually sell a program.
Right.
And you did it. And
totally agree. Very cool.
Yeah, so well done. All right, so if anyone has any questions, we can open it up. Otherwise, we want you to be at our next event. It's coming up in Salt Lake. Like I said, we have 4 spots. It filled up so fast. Our acupuncture blueprint program is sold out on Friday. Saturday's event's going to be at the Salt Lake City Library, and it's going to be amazing. We're going to feed you lunch. We're going to have Dr. Carmel up there teaching. She's going to be laying down the words. Spencer Eames is going to be up there dishing out wisdom. We're going to have Ryan Killarney. He's going to be talking about getting the scoop on your poop. We're going to have Dr. Antori doing fecal matter transplants. Or I didn't tell you that, did I?
I'm
we're
bringing
going to have
the blender.
Cade's bringing the blender. I'll bring the enema bags.
Wait a minute, are we making bulletproof poop?
Well, yeah, there you go. We're going to have Dan Kalmans. He's going to be there with Gene, and they're going to be training us on how to do herbal injections and acupuncture points. So it's going to be just one heck of a party. And then on the other side of the room, for those of you who are clients, we're going to train your team on all the administrative duties, on how to run a business, how to put the things in, how to do the jobs that you guys probably don't want to do too much. So it's going to be kick-ass, and we're going to have our next one in November. So go to gowellness.com, hit events, get registered for Saturday's event, August 6th, or if you can't make it, look into November, and I can't wait to see you there. Okay, any questions from anybody before we sign out?
No one's raising their hand.
Right, what's that?
No, I haven't had any hands raised, and in fear of muting you, I'm just gonna leave it on mute unless someone actually wants to pipe in. If someone has any personalized questions or anything, just raise your hand, and I'll unmute you. It looks like everyone got their learn on, and we'll get in touch after we sign off if you're have any other questions.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to everyone who attended. Lou Jan, Bernadette, I can't wait to see you this weekend. John, we've never met, I don't think, but thanks for being on here. Karina, good to have you. Matt, awesome. Michael Jones, as always.
Mike, what's up, man?
We love you. Randall Jensen, get in touch with me, bro. Sherry, good to have you here. You guys keep crushing it down there in the hot country. I know it's burning up down in Yuma. Suzanne, good to have you here. Cade, thanks for hosting this. And Dr. Antori, I just really appreciate you being here. It made this a lot more enjoyable. So
hey, it's really cool. I'm looking forward to the boot camp. And the really exciting thing, I've never ever been to a seminar or a boot camp where a Tesla is being given away. A brand new 2016 Tesla. Wait. That's amazing. Reagan, you're so generous.
As soon as you get the indigenous fecal matter transplant going, I'll give away a Tesla, okay? Because that's a game changer. All right, guys, come get your Tesla. It's a giveaway. I'm going to give you a free ride of my Tesla. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.